There's a lot of wisdom that can probably be dragged out of dead guy quotes. Greg's given you a good dead guy quote tonight. Those who don't learn from history's lessons are doomed to repeat them. These are the lessons that other people have paid for. They've bought them, and that's on your behalf. So Greg's case study there, and I think we'll all agree that with his near miss, he was probably one of the lucky ones. Many are not so lucky. It's really, really important that you do read and learn and analyse not only the other experiences that others have, but also the ones that you'll have on a day-to-day basis. Those of you who know me well know that I expound the virtues of self-analysis in reviewing every flight that you do, whether or not it goes well or not so well, to pull out the little gems of knowledge or the little treasures that you can put away for future reference. If it's true to say that we all start our flying careers, and most of this is directed at pilots, of course, if we all start our flying careers with two bags, one of them's an empty bag, that's the bag of experience, and the other one is a full bag, and that's the bag of luck. Right, it's true to say that our aim as pilots, particularly in the early phases of our careers, is to fill the bag of experience as best we can so that we can refine our judgment and our techniques, preferably before we empty the bag of luck, the depth of which we don't know. So what I want to do tonight with my discussion is to not really discuss how innovatively over the years I've tried to empty my bag of luck, which still has something in it, I hope. But what I want to talk about is maybe giving some tools. The aim of tonight is a toolkit, so prior to Peter and the team releasing the toolkit they've formally put through, I thought I'd just run through some concepts and maybe offer some tools that hopefully you'll be able to gain something from. I have one slide, you can work through it with me, and it outlines the template of what I want to speak to. The first one, and if you have a look at everything that's been said tonight, the aim of tonight, or the focus of tonight, is wet season weather, weather in general, weather-related bad things happening to aircraft. However, when I sit down and look at this, it's not just weather. It's always weather and something else. Swiss cheese model, we've all read it in the books, about multiple things lining up to cause the bad outcome. If it was just weather, you damn straight would never fly into it. It's always weather and something else. And it's that something else that I think actually is part of what we need to analyse. In Greg's case tonight, I'll put it out there, who wants to hazard a guess or an answer to what was the something else? ATC?
I didn't plant that.
Sorry, Rich, you're taking it here. All right, who can help him out? Maybe leave Rich alone.
Complacency.
Complacency? All right, who would agree that Greg was complacent? Oh, you can put your hands up. Yep, okay, cool. It's rat on Greg Day, if you like. All right. Yep, absolutely. What else?
There you go.
Yeah, I was going to say probably ego.
Possibly ego. Everyone's bashing around human factors here. That's great. That's definitely something in our industry these days. Something else. Take another dimension.
Commercial pressure. Yeah.
Commercial pressure's a big one. What, there are four guys? Meeting? Gotta happen. All the commercial pilots, charter pilots in the room, are aware of commercial pressure. It will cause you to make decisions that are not necessarily considerate of risk. I'll talk about that a little bit later. I'm a simple guy. To me, the number one thing there in Greg's situation is weather and terrain. I've spent wet seasons flying around North Queensland, Papua New Guinea, East Timor. All right, terrain. All right, as the clouds get lower, the ground gets higher. It's always that way. All right, it's always weather and something else. Might just be one thing, it might be two, it might be three. Just take us 5 seconds, just have a think about what a something else might be that hasn't been raised so far. Roland, what do you reckon?
Get blank at the moment. Oh, inexperience.
Inexperience, definitely. It's very, very, very hard to analyse something that you don't really have a level of technical knowledge about or have seen before. What about another one?
A way out, plan B.
Okay, not having options. So that's a decision-making process. Structures, Greg's already mentioned that, which is great. One last one. Self-serve in the white shirt.
Poor planning.
Okay, poor planning. Oh, always something else. I could rattle off a whole lot. Weather and the aircraft. A VFR aircraft with dodgy instruments. Weather and night time. How do you see thunderstorms at night?
They're pretty bright.
You actually don't until they start taking pictures. Alright? When the paparazzi come out, they take pictures. That's where you see them. But they're hard to identify. And one of my sort of personal nilly wooksy moments was thunderstorms and night. I'm sure you can draw the lines. Right. So weather and something, it's always that something else that causes you to make a decision that's not necessarily considerate of risk. The big ones in the Northern Territory tend to be commercial pressure, complacency. Greg was shit hot. All right, he's not alone in the room. So something to bear in mind. Some specific pressure points that I want to raise. The first one, where the weather actually starts to impact on us. All right, the weather and something else. If it was just the weather, you would never fly into it. But let's look at some specific pressure points like a master chef, cooking class or something like that. The first one's departures. Rich from ATC has basically said ATC don't really advocate the use of special VFR as a planning tool. Absolutely not. That's not the intent. Now, we know, oh yeah, there's always margins built into these things. All right, what is the visibility minimum for special VFR for an aeroplane? 1,600 metres. Really? And you're planning to do that? So, special VFR is not a tool to get out of the control zone, anything else like that. You're deliberately making a decision to erode a margin that's placed there for your safety. Does that sound like something a reasonable person would do? Okay, there's a term that goes with that. It punches around the lines of negligence. So departures are definitely something to think about. Along the way, avoiding weather. Usually the thing with avoiding weather is that it means more track miles. More track miles means more fuel and more time. Two things we don't really like to chew out. And what if you didn't take enough fuel? Now, some companies will have a policy on this, and that is that during the wet season they will enforce or mandate that an amount of contingency fuel is carried, regardless of the flight. That's a management strategy put in place to help mitigate the challenges that come with avoiding weather. But you can also apply a personal minimum on that. If you're looking at a fuel plant and you're seeing zero margin or a very small positive margin in the wet season, I would probably put it to you that you can do better. Avoiding weather, for those who haven't had any experience avoiding it, to go around a thunderstorm, you might need an extra 40 track miles. In a 210, how long does that take to fly? Anyone who's current on the time? 15 minutes, thereabouts? Yep. Litre a minute, that's 15 litres of fuel. And then you get back to Darwin, and this guy says, hold at Lee Point. Sorry.
Just set him up.
Right, now arrivals. Okay, this is the fun one. Airports are in a location they don't move. Weather moves to airports. Weather hangs around airports. Darwin has a particular couple of weather patterns that do hang around this airport from time to time. You're running late in the day, you're running low on fuel, you're getting towards your margins, and you want to get home. And there's a thunderstorm near the airfield. Not on it because he can't see out of the tower and he can't tell you what's going on, and you know that's just pretty dumb. But it's just to the north of Lee Point. Is that going to pose a risk to the airport? Yeah, maybe. So these are the sorts of things you have to have a think about. The wind shear effects that Harry spoke about, these are all pressure points that factor into your flying. Mitigating that. Well, air traffic control at Darwin, just because they say make an approach, doesn't necessarily mean that that risk has been mitigated. Air traffic control can't provide that separation or guarantee for you. Out at Manningrida, or Lake Avella, or Remenginning, or all of those wonderful top-end destinations, it's up to you. You may have to hold, you may have to divert, you may have to do something else. Trevor's got a story about that in a bit. Things to think about. And these are the common profiles. These are the things we see time and time again that come up. So, lastly, I want to talk about a couple of things that you can do. All right. What do you reckon? I reckon the first thing, flying instructor, I'm always going to tell you to read your books and learn stuff. All right, each of you needs to look at ways of building that bag of experience I was talking about. And congratulations by attending here tonight, coming along and talking to people and listening for what you get out of it. You've had an experience. The bag of experience got slightly fuller. Well done. Talk to your friends, talk about your experiences as you go along. But read things. Visit the BOM website, have a look at the Knowledge Centre. Talk to the air traffic controllers at the Tower Party before they all get blotto. But develop your professional knowledge, because that's where you can then make decisions considerate of risk. When you make a good decision, generally you're drawing on two things: technical knowledge and experience. Now, if you don't have a high level of experience, you then have to try and draw from a high level of technical knowledge, so pursue it. Other things you can do. Contingency fuel. I've mentioned it. I would suggest in the wet season, half an hour. If you're coming back VFR late in the day to Darwin, we all know that there's thunderstorm activity across the wet season. You might like to carry about half an hour of margin. Something you need to analyse. Or drop short of Darwin, take on fuel to bring you home if payload's an issue. There's always a way. You just have to think about it, but there's always a way. Someone mentioned the poor man's weather radar. That's the Oz Runways BOM website. Rich has mentioned the 10-15 minute delay. Great tool for situational awareness. Not really definitive, but great tool for situational awareness. Now, modern day aircraft are getting G1000 and all sorts of wonderful things. All right, I dread the moment that we see a fleet of diamonds in Darwin. I think I'll stab myself in the eyeball with a plastic spoon when I do. But these aeroplanes invariably going to commonly come with weather radars. So that means wake up and smell the new millennium. If you've got an aircraft with a weather radar, I often hear this from pilots. They say, oh, my aircraft has a weather radar. That's great. Do you know how to use it? Do you know how to set the tilt? Do you know how to interpret the returns? Learn those things, because you can read a lot from that particular equipment. And the last thing, we've spoken about risk and hazard and bad outcomes. We've spoken a lot about how to avoid, and this is probably a good point to bear in mind. Dealing with threats, errors, hazards. It's about avoidance, recognition and avoidance, but it's also about mitigators should you find yourself in Greg's position, or should you find yourself with 178 seconds to sort your shit out. So, things that you should be doing and working at as pilots: practice your IF skills. Everyone's got a computer at home, everyone can get a flight simulator. Practice your IF skills. Even if you don't have an instrument rating, practice your IF skills. Alright? I can't stress enough that when you get into a situation, you'll wish you had those skills, you'll wish you'd done the practice. Practice, practice, practice. It's like going to the gym. Alright? So, there is that. And upset aircraft recovery training. or knowledge. Before I talk about why that's in place, I might just put it out there. Why would I want to talk about upset aircraft recoveries?
It's the first time you might realise that you've got a problem is when you're seriously not the right way up.
Because when you have 10 seconds to live, you look out the window, you can see the ground and the trees rushing up, and you can even see the horizon, but if you turn your head far enough, and it's at a funny angle. Aeroplanes, turbulence, penetration speed, manoeuvring speed. Aeroplanes have structural limits. Recovering upset aircraft, if you get inadvertent IMC and you lose control of the aircraft, you may get a window of opportunity to correct it. Usually the first you'll know about it is when you break out of the cloud into some level of visual reference. We talk about nose high, nose low, unusual attitude recoveries. There's a range of things there, but the reason we talk about the specific techniques on one side, it's to avoid stalling the aircraft. On the other side, it's to avoid tearing it apart in flight. Fun facts. Aircraft have G-loading limits, section 2 of the flight manual. How are those G-loading limits affected with flap extension? Know that. How's it affected with weight? How's it affected with a range of things? Invariably though, you're likely to end up in a high speed situation. So exceeding a manoeuvring speed and then trying pretty sporting recovery techniques in a limited period of time is something that you probably really need to have some technical knowledge in. More fun facts. G limits on aeroplanes are generally only considered in the pitching plane. Nose up, nose down. They're not really considered in the flight manual against what we call rolling limits, which is the application of pitching G whilst rolling the aeroplane. Wings, wing spars made of metal, they're really good at flexing. They're not really good at twisting. Typically speaking, the load factor limits in your flight manual have about a 2/3 limit for rolling G. A normal category aeroplane has a normal G limit of somewhere around about the 3 to 4 G mark. 2/3 of that knocks it down a little bit. There's specific numbers that elude me, but nevertheless, with rolling G applied, 2 to 3 G is very, very serious for that airframe, particularly at high speed. Remember, energy is all about the V squared bit. There's always a V squared. So every knot has a real impact. So maybe a few of you thought, hang on, where did all that come from? Okay, that's my point. You don't know what you don't know until you go out and find it. Read widely, talk to people, seek mentoring, seek skills development so that you can come back and share your experiences. And so that the rest of us don't have to sit here and analyse. And that the rest of us can learn from lessons that perhaps you don't have to pay for.